In this video, we're going to be looking at the derivative of trigonometric functions, and we're going to start with the derivative of the sine x. So in this case, if you have y equals sine x, then dy over dx equals cos x. So for our example here, we have y equals sine x, and that becomes dy dx equals cos x. All right, if we look at here, dy dx equals 3 cos x. So notice sine x becomes cos x. Next one, derivative of cos x. Alright, so if you have y equals cos x, then dy over dx equals negative sine x. So there is a little bit of a difference here. It's not just what you would expect. It's cos x goes to negative sine x. So here, dy dx equals negative sine x. Alright, same thing here, dy dx equals negative 2 sine x. Go down, derivative of tan x, if you have y equals tan x, then dy over dx equals sec squared x. So again, dy dx sec squared x. Alright, this is a little bit more complex. We have an x out the front, tan x, so this takes the form of the product rule. Now remember, your product rule always takes the form of y equals uv, and in our case, our u is going to be x, our v is going to be tan x. Du dx becomes 1, dv dx becomes sec squared x, and the product rule states that dy dx equals du dx multiplied by v plus dv dx multiplied by u. So we get 1 multiplied by tan x plus our dv du, our sec squared x times x. So this becomes tan x, and over here we get x sec squared x. So just remember, if you have another x out the front, in the past ones we only had a constant, so you didn't have to worry about it, whereas this time we have an x, therefore you are going to be using the product rule. Alright, so we're going to be looking at some of these chain rules here. Y equals sine fx, then the derivative is going to be dy over dx equals just the derivative of your fx section multiplied by cos fx. So what that means is, if we have y equals sine 6x, my fx component is going to be the 6x. So my derivative will be 6, and then I can just substitute these up into here. Alright, so we're going to say substitute into there. So what we end up getting is dy dx equals my derivative, so derivative of fx, which is 6. We get cos, then we get our original function, which was 6x. Alright, similar thing here, except we'll have a negative out the front this time. So again, I'm going to write down that my fx equals my 6x squared. The derivative of this is 12x. And then again, going up here, we're going to substitute these up here. So what we get is dy dx equals the negative derivative, so negative 12x sine fx, which was 6x squared. Now again, similar thing here, so we're going to do this again. We'll state what my fx is. We find the derivative, and then we substitute those up into the formula. Like so. Alright, so here is a common question you'll get where it says find the gradient of the tangent to the curve y equals 3 sine 3x at the point where x is pi over 3. So we'll begin, as always, when you see this here, this term, you know you need to find the derivative. So that's what we're going to do. If we start with y equals sine 3x, where fx equals my 3x, the derivative equals 3. So remember, we substitute these into the form dy dx equals fx here. So what we get here is 3 cos 3x. Now we need to find our gradient. Now remember, another term for the derivative, or dy dx, is the gradient function. Therefore we can find the gradient. So we're going to say let my x equal pi over 3. So m for gradient equals 3 cos 3 times pi over 3. Notice that these 3's will cancel out. So we're left with 3 cos pi. Now note, remember, cos pi equals -1. So 3 times -1 is -3. So the gradient is -3 for the tangent. So you can write a concluding statement. Therefore, the gradient of the tangent is -3. Now you might also get a question that asks for the normal. Remember, the gradient of the normal is -1 over the gradient of the tangent. Now it's important to take note of that too. Now we have covered that in the past in some of my earlier videos, but remember that is an important part. So to recap the video, on your screen you can see all the formula we've used. I believe the chain rule ones at the bottom of your screen are your very key and important ones to remember, as they are the most common questions you'll get.